And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting Gentex Multimedia presented. So, welcome to Gentex Multimedia livecast for Wednesday, September the 23rd. Well, Victoria has recorded 5 deaths among 15 new cases. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson tells nation new restrictions are needed to save lives. Queensland and South Australia have eased their rules for some New South Wales arrivals and border communities. That is good news. Follow Gentex Multimedia for coronavirus updates and live streams from Australia and from around the world. Headlines today are lifting of South Australia border restrictions with New South Wales depends on crucial case numbers, and Australia joins global partnership to ensure the vaccine. Queensland border bubble expanded while South Australia waives quarantine for New South Wales. And Boris Johnson, as I said, explains new UK measures which is needed to save lives on his TV address, which we will look at in a minute as well. But first of all, let's take a very quick look at what's happening weather-wise. With that, let's welcome Dilraj.
Good morning, everyone. Weather forecast for the rest of today is maximum 31 degree. Brisbane area is partly cloudy. Light winds becoming westerly 15 to 20 km per hour in the middle of the day, then becoming light in the evening. Chances of rain are 10%. Fire danger is very high. Sun protection is recommended till 3 p.m. and UV index is predicted to reach 8. That is very high. So till tomorrow, stay safe and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Dilraj, and it's looking like a very good day, even though it's not that sunny and bright, but even then, as we know, Queensland's sun is never forgiving, so that sun protection is recommended with that UV rating of 8. Well, right now, first of all, let's get an update from our Minister, Stephen Miles.
Let me know when, Jack. Well, it's 238 days since Queensland had its first case of COVID-19 right here on the Gold Coast, and today is a truly fantastic day. There are no new cases of COVID-19 in Queensland in the last 24-hour period, and of course it's day 13 as we track whether we have successfully suppressed those related clusters from the Brisbane Youth Detention Centre, the Corrections Training Academy and the Ipswich Hospital. We are also now down to just 5 active cases, which is an incredible result when you think that we had 55 related to those clusters, and we have, it appears, managed to get in control, although we won't be able to confirm that until tomorrow. It means we've had 1,153 cases all up, but 1,124 of those are considered to have recovered, including one very special patient. Richard, our longest hospital patient here on the Gold Coast, is being moved today from an acute treatment space into a rehabilitation space. It's just fantastic news. You'll all recall Richard spent 77 days in intensive care, but he's on the mend, and that is exactly what we want to see. There was research released this week that showed Australian clinicians, Australian hospitals have been more successful than anywhere in the world at helping people survive and recover. We have one of the lowest mortality rates in our intensive care, and Richard is the proof of that. The fact that he is alive is a testament to our wonderful hospitals, our fantastic doctors and nurses, health professionals and all of their support staff. You know, if we keep this up, we really could be on track to have O's 0 results all the way into October, and wouldn't that just be fantastic? We want to keep up this effort, and so everyone in Queensland, thank you for everything that you've been doing, but let's keep it up, let's keep going, let's make sure that it's our economy that rebounds, not this virus. Let's make sure that we can keep getting people back to work rather than having to worry about the response to COVID. Of course, this result is thanks to the efforts of all Queenslanders, but in no small part to the background heroes of our public health units. They have, well, they always do a great job. They're always doing really important work, but it's not often as high profile as it has been this year, and that's why I'm really pleased to be here today to talk with and hear from the Gold Coast, the staff of the Gold Coast Public Health Unit. The Gold Coast really was ground zero of Queensland's COVID response. We had that tour group early on, a number of high-profile cases, and the staff at the Public Health Unit here have done just an incredible job. They've managed 215 active cases, 2,789 close contacts, as well as 4,598 returning travellers. An incredible effort, and thanks to their incredible effort, that's why we are able to say numbers like today. 0 new cases, just 5 active cases. I'd like to ask Megan Scanlon to say something about it, and then Vicky, the doctor from the Public Health Unit as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Premier. Well, welcome to the Gabon electorate, everyone. We're really proud to have the Public Health Unit on the Gold Coast right here in Carrara. We have some really incredible public health staff here on the Gold Coast who really are the unsung heroes of this global pandemic. The staff here have been working day and night to do that really important contact tracing. They're the disease detectives of this global pandemic. And I want to say a really big thank you for all of the work that they've been doing, making sure that our community can be kept safe, but of course also so that our economy can rebound, so that we can open up our borders to the ACT. And of course, this week's announcement that we're able to now extend that border zone, which I know is so important to local tourism businesses right here on the Gold Coast. That's because of the important work from our Public Health Unit in containing this virus, but also from the work of all Queenslanders, from listening to those instructions and doing the right thing. We're able to be in a much better position today because of that important work, those strong measures that have been put in place to keep our community safe. So thank you very much to all of the incredible staff here, and I look forward to seeing them once again.
Thanks very much. So it's lovely that we've had people come down here to acknowledge the work that we've been doing. It's not just me, there's a whole team of us in there. We all work really well together, and when things get tough, we really get going. So it's been a tough time these last 8 months, from that first phone call that I was involved with the Wuhan travellers, through till now. The Minister, Deputy Premier gave you some statistics there. So you know how hard we've worked, and we're still working hard. There's still a lot of people in quarantine. There's still a lot of people to support. We're helping people go out and see their loved ones who are dying, helping them with their personal protective equipment to keep them safe. So what you find is that we do a lot of things in the background here that people don't know about. Usually we're fairly quiet about it. If you ask someone what an epidemiologist and contact tracer did a year ago, no one would have the faintest idea, and now everyone's an expert. So it's great to see that finally we're getting some acknowledgement, and thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us. We're all happy to take questions.
Minister, regarding the troops pulling out of Border Patrol, is that the federal government throwing their weight around and making it harder on the border?
Oh, look, there's no secret, I think, that the Prime Minister doesn't like our strong border protections, but they have kept Queenslanders safe. His withdrawal of the support of the Defence Force is disappointing. It will make the job of our police even harder, although we do welcome the fact that they have committed Defence Force support to our hotel quarantine effort, and that will be useful. That will allow us to bring back more Aussies who are currently stuck overseas, so we certainly want to do that.
How do police handle that extra workload?
So it'll mean extra work for our police. It'll mean more shifts, more overtime, more police allocated to that task. But they've done a fantastic job throughout, and I'd like to thank all of them. They have done a really great job, and I'm sure they can handle this. Although it would be better, of course, if they could count on the ongoing support of the Defence Force. And I really don't think the Defence Force should be used as a bargaining chip in what is an ongoing political attack from the federal government on the state government. Our policies have worked and they should back off.
South Australia is likely to open to all of New South Wales. Are you putting extra checks on South Australians at the airport to see if they have been in New South Wales?
The checks won't change. People coming here from South Australia will need to declare that they haven't been in what is considered a hotspot by Queensland for 14 days. And so that will mean that they will need to declare that they haven't been in New South Wales in the preceding 14 days. If they have been, they either will not be able to come or will have to quarantine depending on their circumstances.
Why have you extended the border bubble by postcode sort of kilometres?
Well, it's a lot of this comes down to communities and where communities seek their healthcare, where they identify with, what communities they identify with, and distance makes it very, very hard for our systems and for police to respond to. So by using local government areas and postcodes, then it's much easier for police to enforce, it's much easier for people to understand where those boundaries are, because people know their postcode boundaries, they know their local government area boundaries.
Where are we on the timeline with that trigger?
So, ladies and gentlemen, then you are, as we have heard that the federal government has removed the assistance of IDF, and as the minister said, that's a little bit disappointing. It will put a little bit more pressure on the local police here, to monitor all those detention centers and people coming in through the borders. As we know that the borders are now being eased to some of the areas. Now, monitoring that in itself will be quite hard because, they'll have to look at all the things that, okay, if you are coming from New South Wales, are you coming from any of those areas that have been identified? So they need to be checked. So there's a lot that will need to be done on that field. But right now, let's take a very quick look at the headlines for today. Before we look at one of the detention centers. It's very interesting. We'll talk about that in a minute.
You can keep up to date at news.abc.net.au and on IBN. Here are our top stories on ABC News. Energy Minister Angus Taylor has unveiled the government's so-called technology roadmap, which outlines an intention to invest in areas such as gas, wind and solar. But Malcolm Turnbull has hit out at the plan, calling it a fantasy. The former Prime Minister took particular aim at the government prioritising gas, saying it's a very expensive fuel. Security officials are warning that extreme right-wing groups are now using similar recruitment tactics to those employed by Islamic State. At a parliamentary inquiry, ASIO has revealed up to 40% of its current counter-terrorism caseload is taken up by monitoring far-right extremists. Victoria's Premier Daniel Andrews says Sunday's coronavirus testing rate was higher than previous weekends, which could explain today's increase in positive cases. There have been 28 new infections and 3 more deaths in the past 24 hours. Yesterday, there were 11 new cases. Melbourne's 14-day average is now 32.8. And 25 whales stranded on Tasmania's west coast have been rescued and escorted back to sea. Their number is expected to go up and rescue efforts continue throughout the evening. Authorities estimate about 1/3 of the 270 whales involved in yesterday's mass stranding have died.
It's quite unfortunate what's happened with the whales there, and as we know, one of the scientists was saying that it's probably some kind of miscalculation there. Well, right now, as I talked about before, that all these detention centers, so where all the detainees, well, if we call them detainees, or in quarantine, where they are kept, as we know, it is a huge task. So there's so many hotels in and around Brisbane which have been, converted into these quarantine centers. And in the very beginning, they were self-managed, and afterwards the IDF and QPS moved in to monitor that people are obeying the quarantine rules. So right now, let's take a look at one of those. And ladies and gentlemen, this is your very own Marriott Brisbane. And as you can see, at the pool area, all the ones who are in quarantine get a chance to come out and do a bit of walkabout. So whole of Marriott has been now a quarantine center. So this is exclusive live coverage from Australian Indian Radio and Brisbane Indian Times. So yes, they all have got their mask and they do a bit of a stretch out around there while in that lockdown situation in downtown Brisbane, So this we have been witnessing for months now, that since Marriott was made into things. And that's the exercise that goes on every day. So that's downtown Brisbane, and that's your Marriott Brisbane in the beautiful surround settings right next to the river. So there you are, ladies and gentlemen. That is what's been happening. So we thought we'll bring to you a little bit of the glimpse of what's been happening there. And right now for our next segment.
It's time now for Real Estate Update. With Wusha Chandra of GlobeNet Realty, real estate is our world.
Now we're standing here face to face, afraid to move or else.
And ladies and gentlemen, yes, it's time now to welcome Usha Chandra to the studios. Welcome to the show, Usha.
Good morning, Ramesh, and thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you very much for being with us today. So right now, like usual, let's get on to and with the show. So what's been happening in the market there in the sales-wise?
Actually, I'll give you a little bit of a snapshot of what's happening in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane. The total new listings for the month is 6,308. For Sydney, Melbourne is 1,580. And surprise, surprise, Brisbane has got 3,582 listings. So the market shows the Brisbane market is picking up rapidly.
So, those numbers are looking quite promising. So it is good to see that that's been happening. So how about the sales-wise, the private treaty sales?
The private treaty sales are quite good. I mean, Brisbane is still up there. In comparison to Sydney, the Melbourne market is still a bit down.
Okay, so that's wonderful. And now, for any updates on what's what it is the time in real estate. As we say in real estate, timing is everything. So when is the right time to buy, when is the right time to sell, and as they mentioned that timing is very important. So right now at this point in time, is it a good time to buy, to sell, or is it a good time to downsize or upsize?
At the moment, I mean, a lot of people are upsizing the property. Some of them are downsizing as well, where the empty nesters, they are selling their properties and moving into something smaller, whereas young families, they are buying and converting into media rooms or home offices, and doing their gardens, putting new pools. There's a lot of renovations happening in Brisbane.
So a lot of renovations happening, so that would keep the building industry alive as well. Now just a little bit on the rental side, how have you found the rental market at this point in time?
The rental market, Vicky, our property manager, has been extremely busy. We have got multiple applications per property. At one, she has got about 7-8 applications, and the properties are moving very quickly. We are extremely shortage of rental properties. So if anybody is looking to rent their homes, please contact Vicky, our property manager, and she has got multiple tenants waiting on the database.
And that is amazing news. As yesterday, the news that we covered, which was through CoreLogic, and of course Elise from ABC was interviewing Eliza, and they were talking about a slowdown in rental markets. But what he was saying is now that the rental market is still very strong.
Extremely strong, especially in Boondall Targam areas. There's a lot of movements. People are moving into that area because of the schools, the Naji College, airport close by, Old Virginia, industrial areas, the 2 train stations. They are just exceptional space for young families to grow.
Definitely a very, very good area that you are operating in. And now, just talking about, while we're in the rental, this will be the last question for rental one is, as we know, there was a rent moratorium that was put in place that tenants could defer paying rent. Has that affected your agency at all?
No, not much at all. I mean, there was few people only, and a couple of the owners were very considerate, and they have given some discounts to those tenants, and we are all on track again. Most of our tenants are very good tenants. They still have good jobs.
That's wonderful. That shows good management principles of the property and the property managers and the property owners, and combined to get that kind of results where there's win-win situation for the tenant and for the landlords, of course, all put together by a good agency. Now, I guess that you have a promotion going on at the moment.
Yes, we have got a promotion. We have got extremely shortage of properties. So we're doing a promotion giving $5,000 for all the properties listed between 1st of September till 30th of November and settled by, say, 29th of January. They'll all go into the draw of winning $5,000. We are doing free market appraisals. We've got buyers waiting on our database, so if anybody is interested, please contact our office on 3865 4466 or myself on 0419 775 416.
And that is a wonderful promotion that's going on at the moment, which is, so sellers do take notice and take advantage of that when you can. And of course, right now, weekend is coming on, so we look at the open houses for the weekend.
So we have got 4 open houses this coming weekend. 88 Stanworth Road at 10 o'clock, 1 Songbed Way, Tigam at 11 o'clock, and then 26 North Home Crescent, which is exceptional investment property, which is has got tenants till 2021 April. And that's open at 12 o'clock, and we have reduced the price from $519 to offers over $500. And the last one is Windsor Court in Kellam Vale, and it's a very good investment property as well, or first home buyers property.
So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, all the open houses for the weekend. And every week we also present a home of the week. So which one it will be for this week.
We have got an exceptional property in Boondall, 88 Stanworth Road, which has just come on the market about just over a week ago, and it's a renovator's delight. It's got a huge shed at the back, $40,000 shed at the back. It's on 589 square meter block, and it's a great renovator's delight. So ideal for a renovator or for a young family to renovate and make profit down the track.
Well, guys, you had it right. A big, huge shed at the back. Wow. Well. Let's take a very quick look at the property itself. And what size did you say the land was?
It's 589 square meters.
Oh, that's quite large in today's stage and time. And I couldn't help but notice there was a nice boat in front of that shed.
Yes, it has, and it's got a beautiful veggie patch as well, and it's got brand new roof. So the hard work is done on the roof, and it offers over $399.
And that is quite well priced, because of the high demand in the area, I'm pretty sure that it probably wouldn't last too long. So thank you so much for coming with the show. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell our viewers before we close this show?
Yes, please remember our our
Promotion?
our promotion of $5,000, and anybody who lists and sells between 1st of September till 30th of November will go into the draw to win $5,000. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much for being on the show, ladies and gentlemen. GlobeNet Realty.
GlobeNet Realty. GlobeNet Realty has been the longest established, trusted and respected agency in its trade area. Washa Chandra, Director of GlobeNet Realty, provides honest and ethical service to her customers. If you are thinking of investing in Brisbane real estate market, or if you are seeking professional property management, then you should contact Usha Chandra today on landline 3865 4466 or mobile 0419 775 416. And for further updates, log on to our website www.globenetralty.com.au. GlobeNet Realty is your own local real estate agency. Situated at Shop 52281 Sandgate Road, Boondall. GlobeNet Realty. Real estate is our world.
GlobeNet Realty. Yes, real estate is their world. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now it's time for news in brief, and let's take a look at all the news, breaking news that's been happening around the country. Number one is Premier Daniel Andrew refuses to discuss hotel quarantine inquiry. As we know, some of the security companies have been under the microscope there as well. But Victorian Prime Minister says making judgments about the particulars of the hotel quarantine system would both be hypothetical and premature. Let's hear from Premier Daniel Andrew.
Is it good enough for your top advisor, Chris Eccles, to not know who made the decision for private security to be engaged, and also for him not to pass on the email to you from Phil Gaetjens offering the ADF?
Well, as I've consistently said, Simon, there's a process going on at the moment, and it's important that that process runs to its logical conclusion, and that will be findings, guidance, all sorts of material that will come out of that. They'll make recommendations, I would think, about what next steps should be, and I'll leave it to the inquiry, which I'm assisting later this week, to do that important work.
Will you answer those questions tomorrow if asked?
Well, what I'm asked is a matter for counsel assisting. I can confirm to you that I'll be truthful, absolutely honest and direct.
Obviously you're not answering the question in this forum.
Well, this is not the forum to do it, Simon, with the greatest of respect. I understand why you asked the question, but there's a process going on, and I'll be part of that process. And it is not appropriate for me to be essentially duplicating that process from this podium.
There has been a lot of criticism that a lot of top bureaucrats seem to have I don't recall response. Do you think that it is okay for people like Chris Eccles to not really say that they remember what happened in decisions, for example, hiring thousands of people worth millions of dollars and how that happened? Do you have confidence in the fact that no one is being held accountable for these decisions?
Well, again, the inquiry has not concluded its work, and the answers that we need, the answers that we don't have, is exactly why the inquiry was set up. Not for the avoidance of those answers, but to get them. And of course, the fullest and most detailed way in which we'll get those answers is when the inquiry has concluded its work.
Do you expect?
And as he said, that until the inquiry is concluded, the journalists would have to wait. And as we have seen yesterday's news as well, that his popularity has in fact increased. So a lot of people, despite all those protests and other things that have happened, people said that his management under the circumstances has been pretty good. So right now we'll have a very quick look at the whales stranded in Tasmania, as we have seen that in the news brief. So a major effort is underway on the west coast of Tasmania to save hundreds of stranded whales. And good on all the volunteers for coming out and all the workers, for this noble cause.
Super hard, as you can imagine. We've got people in the water with stressed animals. It's cold, it's wet. It's a slog.
And now for the next news, which is Angus Taylor, as he discusses government's new energy policy, which has come under limelight as well. And of course, there's some scrutiny about that as well. We'll hear from Malcolm Turnbull as what he thinks about that. But Lee Sales interviews Energy Minister Angus Taylor.
Minister, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me, Lee.
Have you modelled the impact these policies announced today will have on Australia's emissions by 2050?
Look, we have, through the work we've done, as part of prioritising these technologies, ascertained that by 2040 we could reduce emissions by about 250, the equivalent of about 250 million tonnes. That's close to half of Australia's emissions, just from success in reaching the stretch goals on these technologies.
So,
and of course,
just to be clear before you go on, so are you saying that you would have a reduction of 50% on today's emissions level, or what's your baseline?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct, and that's just on these technologies, of course. I mean, there's other things going on which are driving down emissions. So they're a very substantial part of our economy that's being affected
But we
by
are
the
a signatory
technology.
to the Paris Agreement, which means by 2050 we're supposed to be at net zero. So if you're only at a 50% reduction by 2040, that only gives you 10 more years to then get to another 50%.
Now, I've heard others make this point, Lee, and let's be very clear about this. The primary national...
So there is again that news of the energy, and as the Minister touted the benefits of controversial carbon capture and storage technology, how and what it's going to be like, and what kind of long-term effect will that have. Here's the next part of that interview.
Humans have been extraordinarily effective at dealing with tough challenges throughout our history. We do that time and time again through progress on technology. That's how we feed the world. That's how we've delivered the prosperity that we enjoy and we've become accustomed to. And I think that's where the world needs to focus. I mean, you've got to remember here that this is a global outcome that we have to achieve. We've got to bring the developing world with us. The developing world wants prosperity. Australians want prosperity. Everyone wants prosperity, and they should. There's nothing wrong.
So everyone wants prosperity, and this is how they have moved up to where we are at this point in time. But right now, there's a controversy over the federal government's purchase a piece of land for Sydney's second international airport. Let's look at that report.
These paddocks at the foot of the Blue Mountains are the site for one of the nation's biggest infrastructure projects, Sydney's second international airport, a 24-hour aviation hub for passengers and freight.
Today, the Cabinet has confirmed that Badgerys Creek will be Sydney's second airport.
It's clearly going to be a single runway with a modest terminal building, and it will grow as the passenger demand grows.
But now the massive project has hit turbulence, with the revelation the government has paid 10 times the value for a vital parcel of land, gifting the owners of the land a $27 million windfall from taxpayers.
Well, I think the Morrison government needs to explain how they got this so wrong. How could they pay 10 times the value for a piece of land? How did they actually allow this to happen?
In 2014, Badgerys Creek in Western Sydney was confirmed as the location for Sydney's second airport. 4 years later, the federal government purchased a parcel of land, the Leppington Triangle, from the Leppington Pastoral Company for nearly $30 million. 11 months later, that land was valued by the Infrastructure Department at just over $3 million. The land isn't scheduled to become part of the airport until 2050.
The auditor's report here is quite damning. That's the only way to describe it. I think as a member of the public you would be astounded at the maladministration that has been revealed, and perhaps wrongdoing.
The Budgery Creek land and what the government pays and what it's valued at right at this point in time. Real estate is all about valuation and buying things at the right time and selling at the right time. But anyway, that's that news there. But right now, let's come to Queensland and what's happening in Queensland. As was mentioned, that in Queensland, the industry in the building part is booming. Even out into the southern Moreton Islands. And we got to see a bit of that firsthand on Father's Day weekend when we went to Kuchi Madlo Island. Building boom in Queensland's southern Moreton Islands. Well, the federal minister has now announced a new energy plan. The Morrison government spent last week making a series of separate announcements on energy policy, including a controversial threat to build a taxpayer-funded power station in New South Wales Hunter Valley. Yet another announcement, this time around new technologies. And as we know, that also came under a little bit of fire. So let's take a very quick look at that announcement.
Three years ago, after South Australia suffered a statewide blackout, Alan Finkel was asked to review the nation's electricity system.
The potential peacemaker is Chief Scientist Alan Finkel.
While mainly tasked with ensuring cheap and reliable power, his answer was a clean energy target.
The mix is not as important as the outcome.
We needed an emissions reduction trajectory, he argued, to give the electricity sector confidence to invest.
Investment never comes with certainty. What the investors want is clarity. They want some vision of the future.
Alan Finkel has once again been involved in trying to find a way forward, chairing a panel which was behind the release today of the government's latest energy policy. But the world has moved on and the government handed Dr Finkel a different brief.
There will be no carbon tax under the government.
And she will be judged.
Decision to terminate the carbon tax
is driven by economics and engineering.
The policy announced today is the latest in our tortuous debate about emissions reductions and energy. From governments proposing an emissions market, to a brawl about an emissions price, to just setting a target for emissions reductions. And now we won't even have a longer-term target. In essence, the plan now is that the government's role is reduced to identifying a few emerging low-emissions technologies and investing some taxpayer funds in their development.
Let's be clear. There are only two ways to reduce emissions. You either suppress emissions-intensive economic activities through some version of taxation, or you...
So, those are the ways of reducing the emissions. Well, right now, let's hear a response. Let's get a response from Malcolm Toombul, who calls this energy ideology. He says it's crazy.
The whole announcement last week was, I'm not going to sing the song, but it's a gas, gas, gas. I mean, that's what it was. It was crazy. I mean, seriously, we have got to stop this mad ideological approach to energy. It's not a question of whether you're for coal, against coal, for gas, against gas. They are just physical things. They all have certain characteristics. Some of them have high emissions, some of them have low emissions, some of them are variable, some of them are dispatchable, and you've got to get the right mix. But when the government starts saying this fuel is the one to go with, that honestly, in the energy sector, people are they are punch drunk with these random interventions from government. It's got to stop. We just need a coherent energy and climate policy. We had that in the NEG. Sadly, that was blown up in 2018. But really, that's what we need to get back to. And then...
And that's what we need to get back to is a good policy and plan, energy plan. But the reality of the matter is that things change, times change, and there are changes in the environment. There's changes in the thinking process of people as well, which also influences those policy decisions that have been made. So many times you also need to be a little bit adaptable as well, is what it's my take on that. Well, right now we are coming to Ipswich. A 25-year-old man will face court with an attempted murder after shooting a teenage girl with a bow and arrow right here in our own Ipswich. So that's what's been happening there. And right now, let's go to the next news, which is on an exchange between Ben and Kim Peek at the hotel quarantine inquiry. As we know, it is a hot topic at this point in time, and everyone's talking about it, and there's some heated debates going on about that as well.
Ms. Peek, is your evidence that Mr. Helps must have been confused or misunderstood what the DHHS's responsibility was at the time he sent this email?
Look, the way that I would describe it is that I think, I can't speak for Mr. Helps, but I think that what he is referring to is activities that that fall within the remit of the
So we'll leave that there, and we'll keep following that news as it develops. As we know, a lot of security companies have come under threat, and they are under investigation at this point in time. So, ladies and gentlemen, for the local part, that's all for today. Right now, let's go to the world news. And first up, of course, Boris Johnson with that news from England.
The virus has started to spread again in an exponential way. Infections are up. Hospital admissions are climbing. We can see what's happening in France and Spain. And we know, alas, that this virus is no less fatal than it was in the spring, and that the vast majority of our people are no less susceptible. And the iron laws of geometrical progression are shouting at us from the graphs that we risk many more deaths, many more families losing loved ones before their time. And I know that faced with that risk, the British people will want their government to continue to fight to protect them, you. And that's what we're doing night and day. And yet the single greatest weapon we bring to this fight is the common sense of the people themselves, the joint resolve of this country to work together to suppress COVID now.
So working together to overcome this threat. Well, right now, next news is how many countries have swiftly joined COVAX scheme. The goal of the initiative is to deliver 2 billion COVID-19 vaccine doses globally, regardless of the income level.
As of today, 64 higher income countries, including 29 economies operating as Team Europe, have submitted legally binding commitments to join the COVAX facility. We expect as many as 38 more countries to join in the coming days, many of whom have already publicly stated their intent to do so.
We're encouraged to see a large number of countries signing up to the COVAX facility, but we face some daunting challenges. For the ACT Accelerator to work as planned, it must be funded. So far, $3 billion has been invested. This has resulted in a very successful startup phase, but it's only a tenth of the remaining $35 billion needed for scale-up and impact.
So there's a lot of money that's needed to get this all going. Well, right now, for the last news for today's segment, as we are fast running out of time, right now we look at U.S. and how U.S. criticizes action of UN while China places commitment to multiculturalism. So let's take a look at that news.
The United Nations has for too long been resistant to meaningful reform, too often lacking in transparency, and too vulnerable to the agenda of autocratic regimes and dictatorships. For the Trump administration, this anniversary is an important moment to mark the many successes of the United Nations but to do so with clear eyes and a renewed determination to see this important body serve its intended purpose.
China will continue to be a true follower of multilateralism. It will stay actively engaged in reforming and developing the global governance system. It will firmly uphold the UN-centred international system, firmly uphold the international order, underpinned by international law, and firmly defend the United Nations' central role in international...
And United Nations Director General reflects on the 75th anniversary of the organization.
It took 2 world wars, millions of deaths, and the horrors of the Holocaust for world leaders to commit to international cooperation and the rule of law. That commitment produced results. A third world war, which so many had feared, has been avoided. Never in modern history have we gone so many years without a military confrontation between the major powers. This is a great achievement of which member states can be proud and which we must all strive to preserve.
So it's a united effort for United Nations, as the Director General reflected on the 75th anniversary of the organizations. Well done. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now let's take a very quick look at what's happening in and around Brisbane before we close off the segment for today. As we know that many of these functions and events would be taking place online or virtually. So ladies and gentlemen, it's been wonderful having your company. Let's take a very quick look at the functions and events. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, it's goodbye from me. It's been wonderful having you. Very, very good, wonderful to see you always. It's been my pleasure being your host for the show. And of course, we love to get those feedbacks and we'll try and incorporate as much as we can into the programs and make it a very, very delightful program for everyone. But most important, needs to be very informative. This is what our aim is. So, right now, it's goodbye from me. It's been wonderful having your company. Be good and most of all, stay safe.